Shalom, brothers and sisters.
Shalom.
And shalom to those who are tuning in on the live. I am Bishop Taz, along here with Brother Ra'ah. And today we are going to be going into the tribe of Asher. First and foremost, we want to give all thanks and praise to the Most High, Ahaya, Bahashem Yeshaya, Wa Rawak. For those who do not speak the Hebrew, that is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? And before we get into the lesson, I wanted to go over a quick disclaimer on the House of Judah International Fellowship Church's stance on Halloween, or Hallows Eve, or Samhain, or however you want to look at it, depict it, call it, celebrate it for some of you. We are the House of Judah International Fellowship Church firmly stands against the celebration of Halloween. Firmly. Right? Why? Because the book of Thessalonians tells us to avoid all appearance of evil. How many of you look at Halloween and the practices of Halloween, the skulls and the ghosts and gargoyles and stuff like that, and think of the Most High? How many of y'all? Anybody? Right? Nobody, right? The scriptures say to avoid all appearance of evil. Can Satan cast out Satan? No. So as it pertains to an historically pagan, evil, wicked holy day of the Gentiles, we have no participation. And if you seek to follow the Most High, if you seek to keep his word, this is not a holy day you would keep. The Most High gave us plenty of holy days. He gave us plenty. We don't need these ones. Khan? So as we go into this particular season, Halloween is going to kick off the most satanic and demonic time of the year. We have Hallows Eve this month. We have Thanksgiving in November. And we have Christmas in December. And then you have New Year's in January. So as we go into this highly satanic and wicked time of year, watch your children. Protect yourselves. Stay prayed up, fast. Because especially with the times that we're living in the last days, how many of y'all know the Most High said that he would release the specter and the shadim in the last days, right? Poltergeist. Demonic activity, right? And if you aren't fasted and you aren't prayed up in this time, you are a prime candidate to be destroyed. Those who are not prepared will fall to this. I'm going to repeat that. Those who are not prepared will fall. So what do? We prepare. How do you prepare? Through prayer, through fasting. Right? So in this time when there's high spiritual activity on the wicked side, we have to do the same. Khan? Now, let's get started. I'm excited for this particular lesson, the tribe of Asher. Right? Y'all ready for this one? This is one of the more academic lessons. And it's particularly difficult to do that with a tribe like Asher because there's not much information in the scriptures concerning the tribe of Asher, and there's even less information concerning the tribe of Asher today. Can we get that? So when we're breaking down the tribe of Asher, it's going to be important that you follow closely with what we're about to go into. So everybody who's watching online, everybody that's in the room, make sure you're keyed in because there's going to be a lot of pertinent information that's dropped in the scriptures that we're going to give you. Khan? So without any further ado, let's get it. Let's get Genesis chapter 49, verse 20.
Genesis chapter 49, verse 20. Out of Asher, his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties.
So what that's saying is that out of Asher, this is Jacob speaking to his son, right? He says, out of Asher, his bread shall be fat. What does that mean? Lots of food right? Fertility of land, right? And bread shall be fat can also be interpreted as wealth, right? And it says he shall yield royal dainties. What's that talking about? Delicacies, food, right? So we're talking about a highly fertile and extremely fertile land, to the point to where you don't need to till the ground. Everything that you need pretty much sprouts from the earth. So this is the land that Jacob is saying that in the last days. Remember, the last days is from the advent of Christ, the birth of Christ, till today. So in the last days, he would be sitting on wealthy and fertile land. Now, to be clear, Asher would not be wealthy, but he would be sitting on a wealthy land. Let's get Deuteronomy chapter 33. Let's get Moses.
All right. Deuteronomy 33 and 24.
Mm-hmm.
And of Asher, he said, let Asher be blessed with children.
Let Asher be blessed with children. Not saying that he's going to necessarily be one of the highest as far as reproduction rates, right? The fastest growing. It's not prophesied for him, but will he have a lot of children? Absolutely. Will he be one of the most numbered in tribes? Absolutely. Right? Read.
Blessed with children.
Mm-hmm.
Let him be acceptable to his brethren.
Let him be acceptable to his brethren. That word acceptable in the Hebrew can also be translated as favored, right? Considered as a favorite amongst his brothers, right? Anybody have that person in their family that everybody just like, not necessarily, you don't talk to them all the time, but when you hear that person's name, it's like, that's my favorite right there. It's always good vibes with that person. That was Asher, right? And it detailed in his name. What is it? What does Asher's name mean? It means happy, right? Or joy, my happiness, right? So that was the character of Asher. Never had beef with one person or another person. It's like, if you want to get some good vibes, that's who you go and hang out with, right? So he shall be favored. He shall be acceptable to his brethren. Read.
Let him be acceptable to his brethren.
Mm-hmm.
And let him dip his foot in oil.
Let him dip his foot in oil. We're going to get into that in a minute, because a lot of people interpret this one way when it's actually interpreted in a twofold manner. Read.
Verse 25. Thy shoes shall be iron and brass.
Mm-hmm.
And as thy days, so shall thy strength be.
Now we're going to get the understanding of why it says his shoes shall be iron and brass. We're going to get into that as well. Right? So the prophecies concerning Asher from Jacob and Moses are mostly centered around geographical location and tribal achievement. It's less based around the character of Asher, if that makes sense. If you read, we've gone into in a previous lesson when the elder taught, we went into the testament of Asher, and Asher never talks about himself. He never talks about himself, but instead he talks about he hates the double-minded or the double-faced person, right? The person who behaves one way in front of people, but is living a completely different life behind closed doors, right? He goes and he talks about that there's two manners of everything, right? There's one part and there's another part. There's twofold to every aspect of life, right? Which is true. There's two parts of every person. There's two aspects of every idea, of every form of knowledge that you can gain. There's always twofold, right? When you find out new information, it's how you're going to accomplish what it is that idea is, right? There's twofold. You can either act on it or you can sit and let it rot, right?
Agreed.
There's two aspects, twofold, but Asher never talks about himself, right? But Asher was full of wisdom, right? Asher was filled with wisdom. Let's go ahead and get, as a matter of fact, we're going to go to Joshua chapter 19 and mark that, right? But when we're talking about, so Asher is one of those tribes where when we're examining him, we have to go based off of historical events, because that's mostly where we find Asher according to scripture. Right? There's no scripture that singularly focuses in particularly on the tribe of Asher. Right? Not much is known outside of a few character traits that we learn, or certain stories or events concerning his descendants. However, there is a twofold history concerning the prophecies in Israel and then being spread in their current location. I'm going to say that again. There's a twofold aspect of these prophecies. It's twofold. These prophecies were fulfilled in Israel, in the northern kingdom of Israel, but they're also still being fulfilled to this day in the location in which they are scattered. Make sense? So, in the last days, the prophecy says that his bread would be fat and he will bring forth royal dainties, meaning that they would live on extremely fertile land and bring forth a lot of rare and essential natural items that wouldn't be found in many places. So when you're looking at exports, people have to come to this particular location to get certain things, right? A lot of the food that you see cultivated around the world has an origin, and usually the origin is from this place, this particular place. Everything grows here, right? Everything grows here, and everything can be grown here, right? So where Asher would be in the last days would be in a place that is extremely biodiverse, right? It's it's some of the most biodiverse and agriculturally biodiverse lands on the planet, right? So what we find according to scripture is that even in the northern kingdom, Asher enjoyed some of the most fertile land. Let's get Joshua chapter 19, verse 24.
Joshua 19:24.
Mm-hmm.
And the fifth lot came out for the tribe of the children of Asher, according to their families. Verse 25. And their border was Helkath, and Ali, and Betin, and Ashphat.
So what we're seeing here is the border of their land, right? The land that they were allotted. Read.
Verse 26. And Alamelech, and
Elimelech,
Mishil, and reacheth to Carmel westward, and Shihor, Libnath. Verse 27. And turneth towards the sun rising to Beth-Gadan, and reacheth to Zebulun, and to the valley of Hishtahel, toward the north side of Beth-Emek, and kneel and goeth to the Kabul of the left land.
Now notice, I want you to keep in mind Kabul, right? Keep that in mind. That's that country, that city of Kabul. Why? Because it's going to become essential to where the tribe of Asher remains today, right? Now, Asher was given the land that we know as West Galilee, right? They were given the land of West Galilee, which has lower temperatures, much rainfall, making it some of the most fertile land in Canaan. Not the most beautiful. The most beautiful land was given to Naphtali, right? Which is why the scriptures say he was satisfied with favor, right? With beauty. So what we're seeing here is that the most fertile land west of Galilee was given to Asher, right? And because of the temperatures and the high rainfall, it made the land ideal for growing plants, wild plants, agriculture. And what happens when you have agriculture and crops? What also comes along? Wildlife, right? And now you have this foundation of biodiversity and agricultural biodiversity, right? Many would interpret Asher's being blessed as it being evident in the allotted land that they would receive, right? So a lot of people say, well, they're happy because of the land that they receive. Well, it goes a little bit deeper than that, right? It's the character of these people. And when we examine them today, you're going to see the character of these people is evident, right? By their name. So when you talk about another indicator of the tribe of Asher is that they're being blessed with children, right? So a lot of people would say that talk about the land, the children themselves being blessed by having the land or being happy because they have the land, right? But this is evident by the land that they receive. So obviously that plays a part, but it's not the whole aspect of why it is that why the children are blessed. What Moses is actually saying here is that the tribe of Asher would not only have fertile land, but the men and the women would also be fertile. Right? Not that they would be the most fertile, they would be fertile, right? One of the tribes that we're going to examine sometime in the future, we will see, is the most fertile tribe. In fact, you might see them in this next scripture. And before we move forward, when you're talking, going back to the fertility of the land, right? They had the most fertile land in Canaan, and rich pasture, wooded hills, orchards, which made the tribe of Asher very wealthy as a nation, right? So when you have natural resources on your land, what do you do with it? You trade it, you sell it. And by doing so, what do you gain? You gain traffic, you gain wealth, right? So their land was wealthy, therefore they were wealthy. Why? Because they could use, this land belonged to them, right? If a house belongs to somebody else and you're living with it and this house happens to be worth a lot, are you profiting from it, or is the person who owns the house profiting from it? But if you own that house and that house is worth a lot of money, who's profiting from it? You. So this is why Asher is wealthy. They own the house, therefore they are profiting from that house. This is going to go into, and me breaking that down, this is going to go into why it is that the tribe of Asher is not wealthy today. Because someone else owns that house. Someone else owns the house. Right? So with the combination of the rich pasture, the wooded hills, and the orchards, Asher was very wealthy as a nation. One of the most wealthy nations in the Western world. And one of the most relied upon nations in the Western world. Right? Now, I want you to keep in mind, I want you to keep in your mind of these orchards, right? These olive orchards, right? That were that Asher was known for in their time. They were known for olive orchards. Their production of what? Olive oil. Right? Remember what the scriptures say, that Asher shall dip his foot in oil? It's twofold. Right? A lot of people think of oil-rich land and they think they think of the oil-rich land and they say, oh yeah, oil, as in gas, gasoline, oil that's produced today. It's twofold. In the land of Israel, it happened to be olive oil that they sold at the markets in Sidon, right, and at Tyre. But let's get Numbers chapter 1, verse 40, the fertility of the people, right? Because remember, it says that they shall be what? Blessed with children, right? Let's get it.
Numbers 1, verse 40. Of the children of Asher, by their generations, after their families, by the house of their fathers, according to the numbers of names, from 20 years old and upward.
Now, keep in mind, this isn't numbering every single person. This isn't a population numbering. This is the number of houses, right? How many of you know that at the age of 20, a man was permitted to marry, right? So at the age of 20, these are their households. So they're not counting the households, they're counting the heads of the households. Right?
The houses of their fathers.
Exactly. So it's not counting all of their children. This person may have 14, 15 children. Right? So it says here, the children of Asher by their generations, after their families, by the house of their what? Of their fathers. It's not going based off of the mothers. Right? Go ahead and read.
From 20 years old and upward, all that were able to go forth to war.
20 years old was also the age that you were allowed to go to war. So at 20 years old, if a man married, he had a year to bring forth a child before he went off to war. Why? Because if you turned 20, got married, went off to war right away, and you didn't have a child, now you're in a tough spot. Right? So you would get married at 20, you will have a year to have a child, and then you'll be sent away to war. These are the men that are being counted, those who can go forth into the army, 20 years old and upward, right? And this particular numbering is the numbering of the Most High, right? This is the Most High numbering the children of Asher. Go ahead and read verse 41.
Verse 41. Those that were numbered of them, even the tribe of Asher, were 40 and 1,500. So
41,500 men of 20 years old and upward. That's a lot. That's a lot of men. But check out 40 years after. Let's see the census this is the first census to the second census. Let's see what this number is by the second census. Let's get Numbers chapter 26. It's 40 years later.
Numbers chapter 26, verse 44. Of the children of Asher, after their families of Jimnah, and the family of the Jemanites of Jesu, and family of Jesuites of Berea, the family of Berites.
Now I want to make this clear. The Jesuits are not the same as the Jesuits we see today. A lot of people think the Jesuits. No. These aren't the same Jesuits. These are those who are percent from this who come from the sons of Jesuit. Right?
Okay.
The Jesuits we see today are not them. So when it says the family of the Jesuits, is not talking about the Jesuits that we know was poisoning presidents and all that kind of stuff. They're not the same ones, right? Read.
Verse 45. Of the sons of Berea, of Heber, the family of Heberites, of Machiel, the family of the Machiites. Verse 46. And the name of the daughter of Asher was Sarah. These are the families of the sons of Asher according to those that were numbered of them, who were 50 and 3,400.
So between the first census and the second census, that number goes from 41,500 to 53,400 men. Right? So while wandering in the wilderness, Asher was the second largest growing tribe, only to Manasseh. Remember how I said that he wasn't the fastest growing? There was one other. That one other fastest growing tribe, the fastest growing tribe was Manasseh. Right? Remember, Genesis 49 says that the vines go over the wall, right? Overflowing. Right? So the only tribe that had that grew more than the tribe of Asher in that 40-year period was the tribe of Manasseh. Right? Asher grew by 11,900 men, while Manasseh grew by 20,500. So Manasseh pretty much blew out every other tribe. The next leading one that's almost 9,000. They blew out the next closest tribe by 9,000. Right? Now, what's impressive about this, how many of you know about the positioning in the wilderness, the children of Israel's positioning in the wilderness? Right? As far as how our camp was set up. The toughest position was given to Asher. Right? So they were in one of the toughest spots as far as guarding the children of Israel, but yet they managed to still grow by the most. Them and Manasseh, right? The tribes that were in the back was Manasseh, Asher, and Dan, right? And Manasseh and Asher, with the toughest position in the camp, still managed to have the largest growing population. It's difficult to do. That's difficult to do when you're on guard all the time, right? So that just goes to show the fertility. Even in the most stressful situation possible in the camp, they still managed to grow the most and reproduce the most, right? So Asher grew by 11,900 men and Manasseh by 20,500 in a 40-year span, right? Keeping in mind that this does not include men under the age of 20, women or daughters. So you can imagine how large this tribe is compared to all the others. You ain't even gonna get into Manasseh. Manasseh just got everybody squashed, right? So even as one of the largest and fastest growing populations in Israel, Asher never established a tribal settlement. Anybody know what that means? They never had a central city system. Like, you know how you have a capital where everybody sort of lives and you have buildings and cities set up? Nah, Asher didn't live that way. They divided themselves into separate tribal settlements. It's almost like states. They had states within their country. All of them were separate from each other, right? So they lived in scattered settlements. Thus, they had many different traditions, values, priorities from one another after eventually leaving the Most High, right? So you had some scattered settlements within the country of Asher that kept the laws of the Most High. You had some that was serving this God, some that was serving that God, it was complete chaos, right? There wasn't any particular unity amongst that land. Now, did they have elders when they were under the Most High? They had elders that would convene at that time amongst the tribe of Asher, but they were scattered. They were scattered. They didn't live amongst each other the same way that the other tribes did, per se. Right? This had a lot to do, the way that they set it up had a lot to do with their disobedience concerning the Canaanites on the land. How many of you know when we were supposed to go into the children of Israel, we were to wipe everyone out? The Canaanites. When we went into the land of Canaan, we were to wipe everybody out, leaving no person, leaving nothing. Right? There were some tribes that chose not to. Let's get Judges chapter 1, verse 31.
Judges chapter 1, verse 31.
Mm-hmm.
Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Akko,
Mm-hmm.
nor the inhabitants of Zidon,
Mm-hmm.
nor of Alab, nor of Ashdod, nor of Helbah,
Mm-hmm.
nor of
Afik. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it just my read just stopped.
You got it? Back down to Judges. All right, go ahead and start at verse 32.
Okay, verse 32.
Mm-hmm.
But the Asherites dwell among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, nor they did not drive them out.
So the tribe of Asher left small parts of Tyre, namely, how many of you know what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coast of Palestine, right? Mm-hmm. The tribe of Asher decided not to completely wipe these people out. Why? Why would they do that? Keep in mind what Zidon was at the time. Remember, we went over this in the lesson on the tribe of Zebulun. They were one of the largest maritime trading ports in the world, the number one. If you wanted to trade, you went to Zidon, right? This is part of the reason they did not wipe them out. They didn't move them, right? So these particular states that they left of the Canaanites were independently run by the Phoenicians, right? So there was still Phonetic or Canaanite rulership in the land of Asher, running their city-states independently, right? So with the blessings that Asher was given, being that they lived in West Galilee, it is their relationship with the Phoenicians that would cause for the tribe to become extremely wealthy. Make sense? So there was a partnership between the Phoenicians or the Canaanites with the tribe of Asher. Follow me here because those who are watching and those who are in the room, follow here because it gets important. This relationship between the Phoenicians and the tribe of Asher is going to determine a lot of what's about to happen after this. It plays a big role, a major role, right? No, remember in the tribe of in the lesson on the tribe of Dan, their relationship with Javan was huge. Later on, their relationship with the Greeks. This is no different, right? So this was the perfect team up in a way, or collaboration. You had the tribe of Asher was seated in the perfect position. You have the tribe of Zebulun near you, who did a lot of the fishing and brought in a lot of fish. And then you had next door the tribe of Issachar, who practiced husbandry, right? Agriculture. And then right to the north of Issachar, you have the most fertile land in Israel. They had the perfect system running. And then on top of that, in the far north of Asher, you have the most powerful maritime trading port in the world. This is a recipe for success and wealth for the tribe of Asher. So they said, if we let them stay here and keep running their operation and bringing in this money, and we can take what we have here naturally on the land and trade it there, we can become one of the most powerful and wealthy trading lands on the planet. And that's exactly what they became. Right? So they became extremely wealthy, especially because of their olive orchards, which at one point they used to supply all of Israel with oil during the famine. There was a famine in Israel, and Asher had enough to supply all of the land of Israel, north and south. That's power, right? Now, what's interesting with all of this power, Asher never tried to take control. Interesting, right? You would think a nation with so much power, with so much strategic advantage, you're sitting at the perfect spot in the land of Israel. Everything for your land is perfect, but they never once tried to come against Judah. And you're going to find that Judah and Asher had a very, very close relationship. The tribe of Judah and the tribe of Asher had a very, very close relationship. Right? They were the tribe of Asher were the leaders of the olive oil trade in Canaan. He shall dip his foot in oil. Right? Remember, these prophecies are twofold. They go for what they were dealing with in the land of Asher and ancient Israel, and they also go for where they are today. It's twofold. However, it is their relationship with the Phoenicians and trade and wealth that would keep them from participating in the coalition against Jabin, the king of Hazor, who oppressed the northern kingdom of Israel severely for 20 years. So the tribe of Asher chose their own personal agreements, their own personal deals that they made, right? They chose their finances, their wealth, their trade over their people.
Wow.
Right? Now keep in mind, this is only a one-time occurrence. This wasn't something that happened often. It's not like they were continuously neglecting the children of Israel. In fact, they were one of the biggest helpers of the children of Israel. Right? Let's get Judges chapter 5, verse 17.
Judges 5:17.
Mm-hmm.
Gilead abode beyond Jordan. And why did Dan remain in ships?
And why did Dan remain in ships? Y'all remember this scripture, right? Y'all remember the scripture from the lesson on Dan, right? This gave us a clue as to where Dan was. This is telling us what Asher was dealing with at this time. So it says, Asher continued on the seashore and abode in his breaches. Right? He stayed on land. He stayed in the port. He stayed home. Right? So Gad was beyond Jordan. Dan remained in ships. Asher continued on the seashore. He stayed home. What did Zebulun and Naphtali do? Read.
Verse 18. Zebulun and Naphtali were people that jeopardized their lives into the death in the high places of the field.
So they gave as many men as they could towards this battle. Read.
Verse 19, the kings came and fought the kings of Canaan.
Who are the kings? Judah. Even Judah came and assisted in this battle, even though the southern kingdom had nothing to do with what was going on in the northern kingdom. Even Judah came to help. Read.
In Taak, by the waters of Megiddo,
Megiddo,
they took no gain of the money.
They took no gain of the money. They did it for free. They didn't have to say, you know what? I'm gonna need travel expenses, and I'm gonna need about 30% of what you get from these people. No, they say, you know what? If they came at you, they came at us. Why it took 20 years? Who knows?
Right.
But the coalition that was led by none other than Barak from the tribe of Naphtali and the prophetess Deborah from the tribe of Ephraim, right? So they led this coalition against Jabin, right? Jabin was a Canaanite or a Phoenician king who oppressed the northern kingdom of Israel for 20 years. See, Asher didn't get the brunt of this, particular attack. Why? Because they had a partnership, an agreement. We're going to see that this agreement has an effect on their scattering as well. Asher is one of the only tribes that wasn't completely evicted or expunged from their land because of their agreement with the Phoenicians. Right? So Deborah writes of the different tribes' participation in the battles and states that Gad was east of the Jordan River. He was too far away. Right? Where they're going to be fighting this battle, Gad was too far to travel to come help. And we all know what Gad was about. If they brought Gad, they probably wouldn't have needed Judah or Asher. Right? But she said Gad was too far away. He was beyond the Jordan River. He couldn't get here in time. Dan was away on ships with Jabin. He was away doing whatever he does. Right? And Asher simply chose not to battle, even though they were close. But instead continued to conduct business and trade with the Phoenician enemies, although the war was close to home. They chose their partnerships and agreements over the children of Israel. They said, man, if we go and fight Jabin, then they might stop trading with us.
Wow.
Right? However, I want to make this clear. Asher is not to be confused with Dan. They did not completely neglect the children of Israel. Dan just neglected everything. He wasn't home at all. Asher was one of Judah's closest nations and allies. Right? And they came to defense, and they came to the defense of Judah many times and often went above and beyond. Right? There was a close partnership between the land of Asher and between the land of the Asherites and the tribe of Judah, the Judeans. Right? They fought many battles with Israel throughout history, such as the Midianite oppression and the entering of Gideon and the 300. How many of you know about Gideon and the 300?
Yes.
It's legendary, right?
Yes.
How many of you know that Asher made up majority of that army?
Wow. Wow.
Asher was one of the leading tribes in that battle. Let's get Judges chapter 6, verse 1.
Judges 6, verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel. And because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them the dens, which were in the mountains and caves and strongholds.
Mm-hmm. So basically what they're doing here is they put themselves in high places to where they could see everything. Right? Read.
Verse 3. And so it was when Israel had sown.
When they went and they planted their crops and their food, what did the Midianites do? Read.
That the Midianites came up and the Amalekites.
Now, notice who just has to be in this situation. Amalek. Amalek snuck up in there. How many of you know who the Amalekites are? Esau. So Esau had to sneak in here and get him a little bit too.
Yeah, out here.
Read.
And the Amalekites and the children of the east.
Who are the children of the east? The Moabites and the Ammonites. Read.
Even they came up against them.
So everybody said, oh yeah, remember they have consulted together against thy hidden ones, right? They got together and they said, y'all, Israel is sinning. You know what that means, right? The hedge is taken off of them. So let's all come get a piece. We can all get a little bit of this right here. Read.
Verse 4. And they encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So thou come into Gaza and left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep nor ox nor ass.
So what they did was they would sit and they would watch. Whenever they tried to sow, they would come and destroy their crop. They would kill their animals. What are they doing? They're causing a famine. Now, this is where Asher gets involved, because guess where a majority of the food is coming from?
Asher. Yeah.
So now you're messing with their money. Listen, I'm trying to trade. You up here digging up the orchards and messing with my animals that till this land. Now I can't make no money. Now we got a problem. Right? So they encamped against them, and every time that they tried to plant, every time that they tried to import cattle, they would destroy them. Right? Sounds familiar, right? 70 AD. Built a big old wall and kept everyone trapped inside to where nothing could get in, nothing could get out. They starved them to death. Gideon would be sent by the Most High to destroy the Midianites using 300 men that were divided. They were divided into 3 sections. So a lot of people don't realize how impressive this is. You already have an army of 3 men against what? 5 separate nations, powers at the time. right? You have the Midianites, the Amalekites. You had the Ammonites and the Moabites. That's 4, right? This is 300 men. And keep in mind, Gideon's strategy was to divide them into 3 parts. So this is 100 men per group. So it's not even just 300 men as a whole. It's actually 100. Right? And the Most High did this. How many of you know why the Most High did, why he made them fight with 300 as opposed to their full army? Because they had more. Why did they only send 300? So they can show his power. They can't boast. The children of Israel can't boast and say, yeah, look what we did. We went and defeated all these people. Big old army. Yeah. Ra, come against us, see what happened. Right? The Most High said, nah, send 300. I'm going to show my power through this situation. Let's see Judges chapter 7, verse 23.
Judges chapter 7, verse 23. And the men of Israel gathered themselves together out of Naphtali and
Naphtali.
Out of Naphtali.
Now keep in mind, Naphtali is next door to Asher. Right? Read.
Together out of Naphtali and out of Asher and out of all Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites.
So these are 3 tribes. These are the 3 tribes that participated in this battle. You had the tribe of Naphtali, the tribe of Asher, and the tribe of Manasseh. And all out of Asher, all out of Manasseh. So keep in mind, Manasseh has the largest population in Israel. They have the largest population in Israel. All of them came out to fight. All of them came out to fight, but the Most High said, "Nah, I only need 300." 24. Go ahead and read verse 24.
Verse 24. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and take before them the waters until Bethbarah and Jordan." Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and took the water until Bethbarah and Jordan.
So they came in. The Most High said, "Okay, it's time to fight." And they went and they took all of the land all the way down over to Jordan, right? Over near where the land or Gilead or Gad is. So they pretty much swept all of all these 300 warriors. Swept from the land of Asher and Naphtali all the way down through the northern kingdom of Israel over to Gad. It is impressive, right? So the tribe of Asher was one of the tribes at the forefront of the battles with Gideon against the Midianites for the northern kingdom of Israel. However, many may argue that their participation was because of their decline in the decline of their economy due to the Midianites killing their cattle and crops. Right? So many will say, well, they had ulterior motive. Right? So it was affecting their trade and wealth. So they said, dang, you're messing with my money here. Of course I'll fight with right? This is a fair argument. But this is not the only time that Asher would provide a big assist for the nation, as they played key roles in the unified land of Israel under David and Saul. How many of you know that there was a battle in the exchange of the kingdom from Saul to David? They had to fight because Saul wasn't trying to come off it. Guess who was at the forefront of that battle? To fight with David. Let's get 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 36.
1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 36. And of Asher, such as went forth to battle, expert in war, 40,000. Verse 38. All of these men of war that could keep rank came with the perfect heart of Hebron to make David king over all Israel. And all the rest also of Israel were of one heart to make David king.
So this is probably the one time that you see every tribe, including Dan, come together for a battle. And if you read, I suggest that you go back and read this scripture because it's actually a beautiful occurrence. When all the tribes get there, Naphtali and Asher, they came with the grub, right? So they had all the food and everything. They had the animals and everything. And they pretty much just sat with the tribe of Judah before this battle and they feasted.
It's going down.
Right? So the only time you see something like this happen, right?
It's going down.
So this is the only time and really Israel's history outside of the holy days, the feast days, where we would come back to the land of Israel, where we were all together in one place on one accord with one goal, one mind. Right? So all of Israel were, now keep in mind, it says all the rest of also of Israel were of one heart to make David king. Right? That's the spirit that the Most High put on all of them. He said, you know what? David is your king. So all of these nations came together, and all these tribes came together, and they said, all right, Saul don't want to give it up. I'll send 40. I'll send 40. Zebulun is the only one who sent more. Asher sent 40,000 men. Zebulun sent 50,000. He said, you know what? I'll send 40. let's get this kingdom handed over to David. It's a beautiful occurrence. They came together. Not you can imagine that everybody's there, and you see Naphtali and Asher coming in with all these men with the food ready to eat.
Come on now.
Right? It's a beautiful thing, right? So their the tribe of Zebulun constituted a third of David's army. 1/3 of David's army was Asherites.
Wow.
So their support of this battle was pivotal for David and his army. 1/3. Right? Let's get 2 Chronicles chapter 30, verse 1.
2 Chronicles chapter 30, verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
And Hezekiah sent to all Israel and Judah and wrote letters also to Ephraim and Manasseh that they should come to the house of the Lord at Jerusalem.
Now, many would have the question of why, what was Asher's close relationship to the tribe of Judah? Well, David's best friend was from the tribe of Asher. One of his close friends was from the tribe of Asher, right? And then on top of that, Solomon's son, David's son Solomon, and his and David's friend's son, Solomon appointed him as the officer over the tribe of Asher.
Wow.
So they had a close relationship already. Now, for the sad part, Solomon sold 20 cities of the tribe of Asher to the Canaanites, to the Gentiles, for craftsmen to build his temple, which fractured the relationship between the tribe of Asher and the tribe of Judah. So ultimately, when the nation split, the tribe of Asher split with them. So see how that happened? So Solomon did quite a bit in his term. He did quite a bit in his term as king. Right? That was the close relationship that they had. Go ahead and read.
To keep to the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, to keep the Passover unto the Lord God of Israel. Verse 10. So the post passed from city to city throughout the country of Ephraim and Manasseh and until Zebulun. And they laughed and scorn and mocked them.
So what's happening here? This is post 721 BC. So this is after the final fall of the northern kingdom of Israel. Right? This is after that. So the children of Israel have been in large part deported. They've been deported, and the northern kingdom of Israel has been taken for a possession. Right? Now, what Hezekiah, the king of Judah, is doing is he's sending letters to those that remain of the tribe of Ephraim, of the tribe of Manasseh, and of the tribe of Zebulun. And he's saying, come back to the land and keep the Passover with us. And they laughed at him. But check this out, read.
Verse 11. Nevertheless, divers of Asher and Manasseh and of Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem.
But there were small parts of Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun that humbled themselves, right? Keep in mind, the children of Israel had fallen to sin long before this. They had already been destroyed, but these particular sects decided to humble themselves and come back and serve the Most High power, right? Read.
Verse 12. Also in Judah, the hand of God was to give them one heart to do the commandment of the king and of the princes by the word of the Lord. Verse 13. And there assembled at Jerusalem much people to keep the feast of unleavened bread in the 2nd month, and a very great congregation.
So this is probably one of the final times we read in scripture of the children of Israel coming back to the land, right? The northern kingdom of Israel coming back to the land. Did it stop? Absolutely not. Are there still populations of the tribe of Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun still in the Western world today? Absolutely. It is their relationship. Now, first of all, the tribe of Manasseh was much too large to wholly be deported. Number one. So many were left in the land of Manasseh to keep the land, used as slaves. Those who weren't deported were used as slaves. Now, the tribe of Asher were deported as well, but it's because of their relationship and their knowledge of the land and their wealth that many of them weren't deported. So there was still a great population of Asher left in the land of Asher after 721 BC. Same goes for the tribe of Zebulun. Right? Interesting, right? So that means to this day, we can look in the Middle East and find the tribe of Asher there. Find the tribe of Manasseh. Anybody heard of the B'nai Menashe? Right? A lot of people are saying, oh, they aren't Israelites. Those people calling themselves Manasseh in the Middle East. We're going to get into that when we get into the tribe of Manasseh as well. Right? The tribe of Asher avoided the brunt of the Assyrian deportation due to their already long-standing trade relationships with the Canaanites and the Phoenicians. Right? This is how they were able to return to Jerusalem to keep the Passover while the destruction of the northern kingdom was still hot. Cities were still burning. People were still being deported, and they were able to return from the northern kingdom to the southern kingdom to keep the Passover. However, even with the tribe of Asher's close relationships with the heathen and their fall to the northern kingdom, there was still a large portion of the tribe of Asher that returned to the Most High. Right? Blessing, right? Isn't that a blessing? See, usually what we're taught is that the whole land of the northern kingdom were against the Most High. It's not the case. There were still many righteous of the northern kingdom. Tobit from the tribe of Naphtali was living. He had a righteous family amongst the wickedness of the northern kingdom. Right? We also see a presence of the tribe of Asher. Now, Luke chapter 2. Luke chapter 2. We don't have it in the document because we're sort of double timing it right now. But if you look at, how many of you know about the prophetess Anna? Anybody know what tribe she was from? She was from the tribe of Asher. The prophet Anna, who was promised by the Most High that she would not die until she saw the Messiah. When she saw Christ, afterwards she died. That sister, that prophetess, was Anna. She was from the tribe of Asher. So there was still a presence of Asherites amongst the Judeans, even in the New Testament, proving that the Asherites were not wholly expunged from their land. Many of them still remained in the land of Israel. Right? So Deuteronomy 33 also says that in the last days, their feet would be as iron and brass, meaning that they would live on a land with an abundance of oil, iron and brass. Now, that word brass in the Hebrew is not actually brass. That's why people get confused. That word is not brass. It's copper or bronze. Right? Copper or bronze. Keep that in mind. It's not brass. It's copper or bronze. Right? So their land would have an abundance of oil, an abundance of iron and copper, and many other natural blessings of the earth, meaning biodiversity, crops, food crops, animals. Right? Asher was also blessed with wisdom and a kind nature that all their brothers loved and respected. Right? He was that word accepted means favored. Right? So now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this lesson. To identify Asher, we must identify these things. Number one, the curses. Number two, a large and growing population. Number three, lives in many scattered settlements. They don't have one particular city where all of them dwell. They're divided in a bunch of different groups, tribal groups. 4, oil, iron, and rich with copper or bronze, however you want to refer to it. Right? So it should be an iron, copper, and oil-rich land. And number 5, extraordinary agricultural biodiversity. Right? So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to take a quick 3-minute break. And we're going to get into identifying who is the tribe of Asher. Y'all ready?
Yep.
It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a good one. All right. So we're going to take a 3-minute break and we'll be right back. Don't go nowhere. Let's get it.
Hey, the brother told me the other day, he said, hey, if y'all play this at a high holy day, you guaranteed to make the people dance like Dave. Okay. I said, oh yeah. Hey, Karatas, I make you lean and rock. I make your knees bend. I make you move non-stop. I got the beat hard like a crooked old copper. When the beat drop out, you gon' say the thing hot. Look, I'm dancing with no shame. Dancing with no shame. See, I'm moving something like Dave did. I done broke free from them chains. See, I'm a new man. I made red chains, but they calling me insane. I got me the true man. I got a new name and I'm far away from them flames. And now I'm dancing like I'm spinning on the lowly and Poland. Got these other nations watching like he really got the Holy Ghost. Your shine came and scooped me. Now you really see the new me. I'm just dancing like I'm David. That's just how we do it. Judah. Hey, dance like Dave.
Like Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave.
Dancing everywhere.
Dance like Dave.
Like Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave. Dance, dance, dance like Dave.
Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave. Dance, dance, dance like Dave.
Like Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave. Dance.
Where my sisters at can keep it all modest though. Head wrap, head scar, that's how we go. Virtuous women in the making, no mistaken. We are now tuned in to this proper tutorial. Where are the sisters that hold their husbands down? Where are the sisters being obedient to receive this crown? We back to the business, back to our natural use, back to our beginning. Restoring what Eve did, lesson well worth it. We moving about like we worth it, we deserve it. We forever Rubens, not complicated like a Rubik's Cube. Do it's not like the hottest dude. Teach Jezebel's a thing or two. Now we can dance like Sarah. Wave your hands like Edison. Step and fade like Hannah. We can step and fade like Hannah.
Hey, dance like Dave.
Like Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave.
Dancing everywhere.
Dance like Dave.
Like Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave. Dance, dance, dance like Dave.
Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave. Dance, dance, dance like Dave. And we gon' make it dance like Dave.
Numbers 15 and 38. That's me though, getting my swag on. I'm bouncing, screaming the credo. Boy, this ain't no twerk song, more like a anthem. Sisters are looking beautiful, brothers are looking handsome. David did a dance off. He was Hebrew. All of the other nations respected and kept their hands off. We dancing. We used to do that. We been leaning and rocking for years. I thought you knew that. We don't need a shot of Patron to get us moving. All we need is the word and the Christ, and we'll be grooving. I'ma need ankle support, cause I'ma be dancing like David for so long it might just bring it sore.
Hey, dance like Dave.
Like Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave.
Dancing everywhere.
Dance like Dave.
Like Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave. Dance, dance, dance like Dave.
Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave. Dance, dance, dance like Dave.
Like Yeshaya's here.
We gon' make it dance like Dave. Dance. Okay, now on this part of the song, I want y'all to turn up, turn up. We about to praise the Most High, because he's the one that brought you out of these chains. He's the one that gave you this truth. Dance, 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 dance like Dave. Dance, 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 dance. We gon' make you dance like Dave. Dance. Karataza, Akkad, Yapad Q, Rashawn Judah. Yeah, dance like Dave. We just made you dance like David. Hey.
We back. Elder put on that jam again. he put on that jam. Okay, I got a new burst of energy. Y'all ready? All right. So I'm gonna do a quick recap of the things that we're looking for concerning this tribe. Number one, as always, is the curses. Number two, a large and growing population. Number three, they live in many scattered settlements. Number four, oil, iron, and copper-rich land. And number five, extraordinary agricultural biodiversity. Right? So our first source is going to be coming from nationalgeographic.com under biodiversity. We got to find out what biodiversity is, what that means, in order to fully understand what land the Most High is talking about here. So let's get nationalgeographic.com.
Biodiversity. Biodiversity is a term used to describe enormous varieties of life on Earth.
So enormous, large, not small, right? Because if you have something that's smaller, it can possibly be planted there, right? This is natural, what naturally grows on this particular land. So it's a term used to describe enormous variety of life on Earth, right? Read.
Life on Earth. It can be used more specifically to refer to all of the species in one region or ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Biodiversity refers to every living thing, including plants, bacteria, animals, and humans.
So that means you have a variety of different plants, bacteria, animals, and people. Right? So think of everybody in this room, you got people from all walks of life. Imagine us as plants. That's biodiversity. Right? It's the same thing as having a diverse school or a diverse group of people. That's what biodiversity is. Lots of different kinds of different things that naturally grow on one piece of land. Right? So Jacob prophesied that Asher would inherit extremely fertile land, loaded with natural resources that should have made them wealthy. Right? Remember the example that I gave. If you own the house, what? You own everything in it. You're the one profiting from its wealth. If somebody else owns it, they're profiting from the wealth. Why? Because chances are your rent is going to be very high. So they're the ones benefiting from it, right? So what we're seeing here is that they were blessed with a land very similar to what they had in ancient Israel, right? Their land would bring forth a variety of crops, plants, and savory foods known as delicacies. Remember what the scripture said, right? It says that they shall bring forth royal dainties. That word royal dainties means delicacies, foods that you can't find anywhere else. And for a time, majority of foods that you can't find anywhere else originated in this particular land. Now you can find them everywhere because they were taken and they were planted in other places, right? So Jacob here in Genesis 49 describes what we know as biodiversity, right? So Asher's land in the last days would be amongst the most agriculturally diverse places on the planet. And the most diverse continent in the world is America. The most biodiverse continent on the planet is America. Namely, South America. South America is the most biodiverse place on the planet Earth. In case you don't believe me, let's get activesustainability.com. Again, that is activesustainability.com. And the article that we're about to look at is called Top 10 Countries and Biodiversity. Again, activesustainability.com, Top 10 Countries and Biodiversity. Let's go ahead and get that.
America is the continent that has the most countries rich in biodiversity.
Read that again.
America is the continent that has the most countries rich in biodiversity.
Read.
Brazil.
Where is Brazil at? South America. Where is Colombia at? South America. Read.
Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Peru, Venezuela, and the United States.
So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of these countries on the continent of America are South American countries. 5. Right? Read. Drop down to Brazil. You slide over to Brazil in the article. Go ahead and read.
Brazil is the country with the greatest biodiversity of flora and fauna of the planet. Brazil has the highest number of species of known mammals and freshwater fish, and more than 50,000 species of trees and bushes. It takes first place in biodiversity and plant biodiversity.
So Brazil is literally the most biodiverse place on the planet. And you know what? All of Brazil still hasn't been discovered yet. There are still parts of Brazil that have yet to have anybody go. Why? Because the brush is so thick, not everybody can go in there. See, in the time when Brazil was first being settled and colonized by the Europeans, all the Brazilians knew they had to do was get into the woods. If they could get into the woods, nobody would follow, because they got all kinds of anacondas and spiders and piranha. They got everything out there. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Jaguars. And you can't see nothing because it's thick.
Come on now.
Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. I have a lot of friends that live in Brazil and that are in Brazil to this day. And they told me about it. There's nothing to mess with over there. If you could get into the woods, you're scot-free. And it was the same way. It was the same way in Panama before they tore down everything to build the Panama Canal. They would send the natives in there and say, yeah, go in there, map it, and come back. And they would go in there and they would not come back. Right? So Brazil is so thick and full of different life, all of it hasn't even been discovered yet. Right? Notice it says species of known mammals. There's a lot of unknown in there too. Even today, with all the technology and weaponry that they have, people are still not as bold enough as to just walk up in there. Right? So there's a lot of South America there's a lot of people in South America that have yet to be discovered.
Come on.
There's still a lot of Brazilian tribes, Amazonian tribes in those areas that have yet to be found. Right? Read. Mm-hmm.
Okay. While South America is the most
source, even so, right here. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Even so, the loss of tropical forests due to uncontrolled agriculture and logging is still on the rise.
So while this country is the most biodiverse, remember what the scriptures say about the Gentiles. They rape the earth. Right? So they're tearing down all of this agriculture and all of these forests to the point to where the biodiversity of the greatest, now keep in mind, it's still the most biodiverse country on the planet Earth, the most biodiverse area on the planet Earth, with them destroying it. So you have unknown species, unknown insect species, unknown mammal species, plant species that are being destroyed that we never even discovered. Had the opportunity to discover. So while South America is the most biodiverse place on the planet, Brazil in South America is the most biodiverse country in the world. Right? The Most High, through Jacob and Moses, is giving us a geographical location of where Asher is. However, biodiversity is not the only standard given. Right? Now I know we didn't get into Ecuador and Peru, but those are also, I believe Ecuador is second and third between Ecuador and Peru as far as biodiversity. Right? Moses says that Asher's land would be abundant in oil, iron, and copper. So if South America is truly the location we are looking for, then we should see all these things present in extraordinary amounts. Not just there. You can find oil anywhere. You can find iron and copper anywhere. But it has to be in large amounts. The name Brazil is actually very similar to the Hebrew word barzel, which means iron. Right? by looking at who leads the iron ore reserves, we can see if Brazil fits the prophecy that was given by Moses, and whether the land actually rightly deserves the name iron. So we're finding out two things. We're finding out, okay, we've already found that one of the standards is fulfilled for South America concerning Asher in South America. Now we need the other half, the resources on that land, right? Now, a lot of people would say, well, just because they sound the same doesn't make them the same. So we're also going to discover if the land should be rightly named iron. Does that Hebrew name Barzel match the name match the attributes of this particular land? So we're going to find out whether the Hebrew name whether the name of this country is actually Barzel, actually iron. Let's get Statista. That is STATI. That's statista.com. Statista.com. And the article is titled Iron Ore Reserves by Country in 2020. Right? So this is just last year. Iron ore reserves, ore is spelled O-R-E, right? Iron ore reserves by country in 2020. Right? Let's go ahead and get that, Brother Rock.
Australia and Brazil are among the world's largest iron ore producers and hold a large portion of the world's iron ore reserves. Australia makes up half of the world's iron ore exports. Brazil exported around 23% of the world's total iron exports. As of 2020, Brazil has reserves of 50 billion metric tons of iron content and 34 billion metric tons of crude ore. Brazil produced 400 million metric tons of iron ore in 2020.
For those who are in the room, take a look at the screen. And for those who are watching, take a look at your screen. What you see is that Brazil is the second leading iron producer on the planet Earth. They are quite literally walking on iron. Quite literally. Take a look at that again. The only one who produces more iron than Brazil is Australia. Right? Now let's go back over this source one more time. Brazil exported around 23%. Go ahead and read that again.
Brazil exported around 23% of the world's total iron exports.
So there is a 1/4 chance that the iron that you have came from Brazil. Read.
As of 2020, Brazil had reserves of 15 million metric tons of iron content and 15 billion metric tons. Read. And 34 billion metric tons of crude ore. Brazil produced 400 million metric tons of iron ore in 2020.
400 million metric tons of iron ore in 2020. So I'll ask you, is Brazil rightly named iron? So yes, the correct name. So yes, that Hebrew name Barzel is in fact the name of Brazil. Brazil is a Hebrew name. Right? Now, iron isn't the only standard. We were also told copper and bronze, or copper/bronze. Copper and bronze are really the same thing. Right? So not only does Brazil fit the prophecy concerning iron, but it also proves that the name Brazil is in fact a Hebrew name. Right? Because a lot of people sort of throw that out there. Yeah, Barzel and Brazil, but they never actually prove it. Prove that the name is actually Hebrew. So I saw that and I was like, you know what? We have to touch on that. Right? But we also see that copper and bronze, as Moses said, these metals would be found in abundance in Asher's land. So now we're looking for copper. If we go to nsenergybusiness.com, again, that is nsenergybusiness.com. And the title of the article is Top 5 Copper Mining Countries in the World by 2020 Production. Again, that is Top 5 Copper Mining Countries in the country by 2020 Production. Go ahead and read that. Make sure you restate the source.
Okay. nsenergybusiness.com. Top 5 copper mining countries in the world by 2020 production.
Mm-hmm.
Chile is the clear leader among the world's largest copper producing countries.
It's the clear leader. Read.
With 5.7 million tons of metal mined in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
The South American country is home to the biggest copper reserves worldwide, estimated at around 200 million tons by the U.S. Geological Survey. Mining operations in Peru produced 2.2 million tons of copper in 2020, a small decrease on the previous year.
So Chile and Peru are the two largest copper mining countries in the world. Wow. Interesting, right? Interesting.
Wow.
Chile and Peru are next door to Brazil. Interesting, right? Is it a coincidence?
No, that's the word.
Copper, Chile has firmly been in the lead of copper mining production for about a decade, while Peru has fluctuated in and out of the top 2 in that same span. So it's either number 2 or number 3. Either way, it's bouncing back and forth, right? It's no coincidence that both these countries happen to be in South America. And next door to them is the second leading worldwide iron producer. And the entire land of South America happens to be the most biodiverse country on the continent on the planet.
Come on, bring it.
Lastly, Moses mentions an abundance of the presence of oil on this land. Now, based off of what we went on earlier, what we broke down earlier, many would be looking for olive orchards, right? Because Asher was known for producing olive oil in ancient Israel, right? And because of this, many would say, well, they don't produce olive oil, so it can't be them. Did Moses say olive oil or did he say oil? Right? Olives are not native to South America. That's one of the few things that doesn't grow in South America, right? Pretty much everything that you can find worldwide comes from South America, whether it be a fruit, a lot of different types of potatoes, like sweet potatoes, are native to South America. So majority of the foods come from South America. But the one thing that they don't have are olive orchards. That aren't native there are olive orchards. However, it says Asher would dip his foot in oil, meaning that the oil would be in the land that they walk on, right? Much like iron and copper, this is found in abundance in South America. Venezuela has oil reserves with Venezuela has the most oil reserves, and Brazil is at 15th, Ecuador at 19th, Argentina and Colombia are at 33rd and 34th, and Peru at 42nd. So pretty much almost every major country in South America is in the top 50 in oil reserves.
Wow.
Top 50. Venezuela has over 300 billion barrels.
Wow.
This is almost 50 billion more than the next closest country, Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
They're beating out the next closest country by 50 billion.
Wow.
So not only, so it has the oil, it has the iron, and it has the copper. And is in the top of every metric. Interesting, right? And it's even more impressive. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 countries all in the top 50. right? So the oil is there. There was even I have to find the video. The elder and I looked at this like six years ago, and they were the Venezuelans were taking them through the land, and they saw like a river of black, and he saw somebody like scooping it up with a bowl, scooping it out with like a big old bowl, and they're like, "Is that oil?" And they're like, "Yeah, we just use it to plaster." They were using oil, which is probably the most. If you're in the oil mining, you make a lot of money, and they're taking this stuff to seal up houses and boats.
Wow.
This is how much oil they had. It was just sitting there. He was like, "Is that oil?" And they're like, "Yeah." You see them with like the little sand, you know, the buckets that you have in the sandbox. They're just scooping it out. Right? This is how abundant with oil that land is. Now it comes down to this. This is the question. With all these natural resources, with all this crop, plant, animals, raw and natural materials, why aren't these people wealthy like they were in the land of Israel? Because the land, the house, no longer belongs to them.
Come on.
The house is no longer theirs. So they're being taken advantage of. Used to harvest. How many of you guys know that cotton also grows in South America? American slavery of Africans, that form of slavery started in South America. South American slavery was used as a template for American slavery, what we know as the slavery that was inflicted upon the tribe of Judah in North America. So the lynching, the whipping, the Catholicism, they endured nearly, and keep in mind, Portugal was known, Brazil is owned by Portugal, is known for having the most brutal form of slavery on planet Earth. Let me make that clear. What the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Asher and the Brazilians, what they were going through in Brazil was something way different than what we're enduring here in North America. Much worse. It was much worse. And that would make sense because guess where the largest population of the tribe of Judah still dwells? Brazil. There's more of the tribe of Judah. There's more black people in Brazil than there are in the U.S. Shock. So we endured a captivity with these people, not just in Brazil, but in Peru, in Chile, in Bolivia, in Ecuador. We endured the same exact curses with these people, yet we deny them. In fact, it was the natives of Brazil, of Peru, of Chile, of Ecuador that were the ones liberating black people from slavery because they were the ones who knew the land. They were taking people out and taking them into the wilderness the same way that they were running away, escaping. So they were liberating us. Right? So now that we've confirmed that South America is the land that Jacob and Moses saw the tribe of Asher living on in the last days, now we must examine the South American Indians to see whether the people match the identity of the tribe of Asher. So we confirmed the land. Now we have to confirm the people. Let's get the Hope of Israel. The Hope of Israel by Manasseh ben Israel. Page 112. Go ahead and make sure you repeat that source.
The Hope of Israel by Manasseh ben Israel. Page 112.
The water.
I shall speak somewhat in this discourse of the divers opinions which have been, and shall declare in what countries it is thought the 10 tribes are: Hispaniola, the island of Cuba, the continent of America, Panama, New Spain, and Peru.
Panama, New Spain, and Peru. So Peru is one of the main areas that are mentioned when he's describing the identity of the 10 tribes in America, in the Western world. Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia, as well as Chile, were home to what empire in Mesoamerica? The Incas, right? You got the Inca, you got the Mayan, and you have the Aztec. And as we went over, now a lot of these sources I didn't want to rehash because we've gone over them twice in Zebulun and in Issachar. So if you don't know a lot of the information concerning the trade and the markets that was happening between those three tribes, after you're finished here, go and check out those two lessons, right? So a lot of when you think about Cusco, how many of you guys know about the city of Cusco, the city on top of a mountain, right? That wasn't built. That wasn't built by the Incas. That was built by giants. The same people who constructed the pyramids in Mexico and throughout Central America. So they did not construct Cusco. That was constructed by the giants. Why do you think that they put it on top of a mountain? To avoid the flood waters, right? The same thing that a lot of the giants attempted to do during the flood. We studied during the lesson on Issachar and on Zebulun that the pyramids were built to be a refuge in case there was another flood. Right? So the city of Cusco was not built by the Incas. They were built by giants. Right? And the Inca also had a connection and a relationship with the tribes north of them, all the way up to North American. Because keep in mind, we went over the tribe of Gad last week. All of the continent of America came and paid homage to the Mohawk tribe, the Levitical tribe of North America. And they also all attended markets with all of their with whatever it is that they were growing in their areas. They all attended from South America all the way up to Mexico during the Aztec and the Mayan empires. There was trade happening between them. So that whole story of they were around here killing each other and murdering each other, don't believe that story. It's not true. Right? So when we're Manasseh ben Israel points out that one of the main areas where the 10 tribes exist, he points out Peru. Right? Now keep in mind, Peru was discovered a lot later than the other Hispanicized tribes. So Mexico, Guatemala, all the way down through Panama was discovered a lot earlier than Peru. Right? Let's go ahead and get the View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith.
The View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith, ebook page 88. Dr. Williams, in his History of Vermont, says, in whatever manner this part of the earth was peopled, the Indians appear to have been the most ancient or the original men of America. Okay, so to be clear, majority of scholars in the time of Manasseh ben Israel and even before that, there was a consensus that the people from north all the way down to South America were Israelites. It was common knowledge. It wasn't anything new. It wasn't groundbreaking information. Christopher Columbus came to the Western world because he knew that Israelites were there. So it was common knowledge from everyone that what they were going to find when they went there. Right? The only people who don't seem to believe it is us. Now, it's also noted in history that while they're all from the same family, they are not all from the same tribe. We broke that down going over Gad, Issachar, and Zebulun. They all come from the same family, but they're not all from the same tribe. Based purely on traditions, rites, practices, and visage, the way that they look, they would appear to be one people. I'm going to say that again. Based purely on traditions, rites, practices, and visage, they would appear to be one people. So the same God that the Peruvians served in South America was the same ones being served in North America. The same God served in Brazil and Panama and Mexico were the same gods being served in North America. Right? So based off of
all of these sort of outward and religious standards, they would appear to be all one people. But based off of geographical location, which the Most High provides us with through Genesis 49 and Deuteronomy 33, we know that they're different. Once again, we're going back to the View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith. This is the ebook. So if you have the physical book, this is going to be on a different page than what you're looking at on the ebook online. So the ebook is page 88. Let's go ahead and get Dr. Williams. Start over from there.
Dr. Williams, in his History of Vermont, says, in whatever manner this part of the earth was peopled, the Indians appear to have been the most ancient or the original men of America.
Mm-hmm.
They had spread over the whole continent from the 15th degree of north latitude to the southern extremity of Cape Horn.
So they were spread out. Remember what keep in mind, the entirety of the land of Asher was covered. It was populated by the Asherites. But they weren't all central. They were scattered. Keep that in mind here. Go ahead and start from they had spread.
They had spread over the whole continent from the 15th degree of north latitude to the southern extremity of Cape Horn.
Mm-hmm.
And these men everywhere appeared to be the same race or kind of people in every part of the continent. The Indians marked with the similarity of color.
So you remember those black Native Americans that were described in the lesson on Gad? Black broad shoulders, black broad chest, medium height. That applied to these people as well in South America. So they were also black, broad-chested in shoulders, medium height. So the standard of black, people say, oh, you got to be Negroid to be an Israelite. Standard is the same. If the standard is the same, these were Negroid people. Read. Actually, start again from and these men.
And these men everywhere appear to be the same race or kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
In every part of the continent, the Indians marked with the similarity of color, features, in every circumstance of external appearance.
So they look the exact same. So now you see the diverse look from one to another. It wasn't always like that. At one point, they all looked like one people. Sounds familiar, right? When we were all in the land of Israel, we were all what? Black. So there wasn't no range of, this. It wasn't always that way. Same way here. They were all black. Read. Pedro de...
And every circumstance of external appearance. Pedro de Sica de Leon.
Ponce de Leon.
De Leon. One of the conquerors of Peru, and who had traveled through many provinces of America, says of the Indians, the people, men and women, although they were such a multitude of tribes or nations in such diversity of climates, appeared nevertheless like the children of one father and mother.
Go back and read that quote one more time.
Okay. Says of the Indians, the people, men and women.
Men and women, read.
Although they were such a multitude of tribes or nations.
They separated themselves, separate tribes, separate nations. Read.
In such diversities of climates.
From the top, from Ecuador all the way down to Chile, all the way over to Brazil. Diversity of climates. Read.
Appeared nevertheless like the children of one mother and father.
Wow.
Right? So there was no difference in appearance, but they scattered themselves. Sound familiar? Yeah. This is what he writes of Peru. They separated themselves across all different types of climates and different areas, but they were all from one father and mother, one people. Right? So the fact that they were divided into multitudes of tribes and nations were still undoubtedly from one family. This rings true throughout all the Americas, mostly for the tribe of Asher, as in Israel, they never had a single tribal settlement, but rather many scattered settlements, some greater and larger than other ones. So people will look at the Incan Empire. Those were still scattered in separate settlements. Right? The same goes for the tribe of Zebulun. Their empire stretched from the northern part of Central America all the way down into parts of South America, namely Colombia. Right? Let's get page 89 of The View of the Hebrews.
The View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith, page 89.
Mm-hmm.
Alua had a great acquaintance with the Indians of South America and some parts of North America. Speaking of the Indians of Cape Breton in the latter, he declared them to be the same people with the Indians in Peru. If we have seen one American, said he may be said to have seen them all.
There was no difference between them. Dressed the same, walked the same, spoke the same, treated them the same, looked the same. He said, if you've seen one American, you've seen them all. There's no difference. Oh yeah, that one up there was dark skinned, but this one here is light. No, it was right. You may have some. You may have the scriptures say that Ephraim is a cake not turned. Some of them are light, some of them are dark. But as a group, as a whole, they were still Negroid. He said this. He talking about the Indians of South America concerning the people of Peru and the North Americans. He said they're the same people as the Indians in Peru. Read.
These remarks do not apply to all the people in the northern extremities of America.
Now, this is what I wanted to get into. Because the elder and I have had conversations where people say everybody in North America isn't an Israelite. Everybody in Central and South America aren't Israelites. Duh. And this historian is about to break down who are the people living on this land that aren't Israelites, but they were living amongst Israelites.
Come on.
Let's get it.
The
Eskimo
natives appear to be a different race of men.
They don't look the same. The Eskimo, if you look at the Native American in North America and the Eskimo from areas like Alaska and Canada, the Eskimo look Japheth and they look completely different. I'll put it like this. The Eskimo has softer facial features than what we see with the Gadites of North America. They don't have the sharp cheekbones. They don't have the sharp definition of their face and of their eyes. It's very soft. Like the visage of Japheth was. When you look at Genghis Khan, he does not have sharp facial features. It's very round, very soft. Right? So the Eskimo appear to be of a different race of men. They don't look the same. He said, okay, when I go from North America all the way down to South America, if you've seen one, you've seen them all. They look the same. But these particular people don't look like the rest of them because they weren't intermarrying with them. Sound familiar? Keep in mind the North American Indians to the Central Americas, all the way down to the South American Indians. They had arranged marriage. They didn't marry outside of their tribe. That's why the Eskimo didn't look like the Gadites, the North American Indians, and vice versa, because they weren't intermarrying. Right? Read.
This race are found in Labrador and Greenland and around Hudson's Bay. Mm-hmm. All these appear evidently the same with the Laplanders, Zemblins, Samoyeds, and Tartars in the east. They probably migrated to the Western Hemisphere at periods subsequent to the migration of the Indians.
So it actually shows who these people are from. No, they're not. They didn't come from the same place as these native Indians that we find here in North through South America. They come from a totally different place. And you know what? It even goes as far as to show you where they are in the Americas. So no, not everyone in North America, Central and South America are Israelites. There were Gentile tribes scattered within them. But there's a reason why they were able to tell the difference between the two, because they still remain separate. Sounds pretty Israelite to me. Right? And keep in mind, in South America, they married for survival. You were considered disadvantaged if there wasn't a married couple over the family. Why? Because they saw the male gender role and the woman gender role as pivotal for the survival of the nation. So if you didn't have a married couple at the helm of your family, you were considered disadvantaged. Sound familiar? The women raised their children to take care of the house, to help the man with business. Sound familiar? They viewed marriage as, the parents viewed marriage as a somewhat of a business transaction. How are you going to further legacy? They viewed marriage as legacy. Sound familiar? Divorce was not permitted. Sound familiar? Go ahead and read.
They or some of them might have come from the north of Europe.
Come from where?
The north of Europe.
Whose land was originally the European land originally belonged to who? Japheth. The people that you refer to as Chinese. Europe originally belonged to them. So he's identifying the Eskimo and the people alike as Japheth. So for those of you who are saying, nah, the Native Americans and the South Americans are Japheth, the historians are clearly telling you that they're not the same. Going as far as to tell you where the Eskimo came from. Where else did he say he come from? Read.
They or some of them might have come from the north of Europe. From Norway to Iceland.
From Norway to Iceland, read.
Then to Greenland.
Then to Greenland.
And then to the coast of Labrador. And further west. But the consideration of those different people does not affect our subject.
But the consideration of those different people does not affect our subject. It has nothing to do with with the people of North, Central, and South America being Israel. It doesn't affect their Israel, their standing as the children of Israel. Keep in mind, all the land outside of what was considered the hot land, North Africa, as what in sub-Saharan Africa, all the way over to parts of Asia, of the Asia Major area, were Shem's land. Now they're hot nor cold. Everything else was given to Japheth. So you wonder why you're saying that these people came from North Europe, from Norway to Iceland, then to Greenland. All these areas originally belonged to Japheth anyway. So they were where they were supposed to be. Right? And notice they stayed in the cold areas. Because Ham was given the hot land, Japheth was given the cold land, and guess what? Shem was given the land that was neither hot nor cold. We could go either way. But notice the Eskimo are found where? Canada, Alaska, Iceland, Greenland, Norway, places that get very, very cold. What Ethan Smith shows here is that not everyone present in the Americas, prior to the arrival of the Europeans, are Israelites. A lot of them traveled subsequent to the Israelites around the same time. Let's get the 10 tribes of Israel historically identified with the Aborigines of the Western Hemisphere. It's a long title. You got to go ahead and repeat that.
The 10 tribes of Israel, historically identified with the Aborigines of the Western Hemisphere by Barbara Allen Simon. pages 175 to 176.
Mm-hmm.
The Brazil Indians are very numerous and divided into clans.
Keep in mind, they're very numerous, right? Upon the arrival of the Europeans, you were looking at a population of about 12 million just in the Incan Empire. That's not including the Amazon basin or Brazil. So just from Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia, as well as Chile, you're looking at about a population of 12 to 35 million people. It's a big population, considering the fact that they still hadn't discovered all of the people because they murdered them all. I want to make that clear. They had not had a chance to really see how many people there were because they brought the disease as... How many of you know that usually biowarfare happened first? Since we've been starting the Children of Israel series, what did they destroy the people with first? Disease, right? So a lot of these diseases killed off populations that they had not yet found. 90% of the South American population died upon the arrival of the European. 90%. And that's not even including those who they hadn't found yet. Keep in mind, there are still people in Brazil today that have yet to be discovered. So there's no telling how many more they killed. Go ahead and start from the beginning.
The Brazil Indians are very numerous and divided into clans.
And divided into what?
Clans.
And divided into what?
Clans.
Sound familiar? Read.
Clans. The degree of their independence depends on their distance from the Portuguese settlements.
Mm-hmm.
They are generally of the middle size, muscular and active, of a light brown complexion, black, uncurling hair, and dark eyes, which discovered no mark of imbecility of intellect. So this is post-Portuguese. This is post-Portuguese Portuguese colonization. So this is after ethnic cleansing, and this is after their destruction. Right? Now, keep in mind, even after being destroyed in the worst kind of ways by the Portuguese, it says, in dark eyes, which discover no mark of imbecility of intellect. They were very smart, conscious people. You know how some people have, like, the eyes of an animal is just empty? You don't know what you're going to expect. They had an intelligent look. Think about a baby. A baby doesn't really have control at the beginning of all of the facial expressions that they make. But what's cool is that as they get older, you start seeing them learning new facial expressions, right? Basically, what they're saying here is that they did not have a look of stupidity, as if they didn't have a mind. Read. Uncurling black hair and dark eyes, which discover no mark of imbecility of intellect. Nor does the turn of their countenance convey the least idea of meanness or vulgarity. On the contrary, their looks and expressions are intelligent. Their looks and expressions are intelligent. None except the Araucanians have been so difficult to subdue. None have discovered a more invincible attachment to liberty. Okay, so basically what they found is they didn't find savages. Even after their destruction, these particular people that they conquered didn't have a look of anger or of meanness towards people. What does Asher's name mean? Even after, now keep in mind, they're enduring the most harsh form of slavery that has ever existed on planet Earth. So that North American slavery that previously you thought was number one, drop that down to 2. So they're enduring the harshest form of slavery, yet their countenance doesn't convey the least idea of meanness or vulgarity.
But that didn't go for all of them. It says the Araucanians have been so difficult to subdue, and none have discovered more and more invincible attachment to liberty. So these people were difficult to war against and to beat, and they also couldn't be stopped from having revolts. They were always revolting against captivity. So according to Reverend Cushman in Plymouth, New England in 1620, the natives they encountered throughout the Americas were not like lions, but they were actually being more like lambs. That's a quote from him. He says that they were not like lions. Who was described as a lion? They were not like Gad, but rather like lambs. They were gentle. They were gentle. They were the opposite of what Gad was. These people were trustworthy, warlike, yet merciful. So they would go to war if it was necessary. They would go to war in self-defense, but they were also merciful. Kind and helpful. It's how Reverend Cushman at Plymouth, New England in 1620 described these natives. He even goes as far as to say that there were many Christians who were not so sincere and kind. So basically what he's saying is that these people possess the spirit of Christ. And when we get into more of the sources, you'll see that they actually say that they behaved as Christians, but they didn't have the ordinances. They didn't have the book. The Brazilians encountered by the Portuguese were filled with the spirit of Christ and lived in a childlike state of mind as it pertained to trust. If you told them that you were going to do something, they believed you. They weren't skeptical of you, right? This made it way easier. This made it much easier for the Gentiles to destroy. Let me repeat that again. They were filled with the spirit of Christ and a childlike state of mind as it pertains to trust, which made them much easier to destroy as a people. Reverend Cushman also says that. However, the Araucanians, or the Chileans and the Argentinians, were much more difficult to conquer. And it was because of their desire for freedom. Remember, their invincible attachment to liberty, their invincible attachment to freedom, that they warred against and fought even in captivity. It is estimated that a population of well over 12 million from Ecuador all the way down through Peru and Chile existed prior to the entrance of the European. There was also an estimated 5 million natives in the Amazon, although much of it remains undiscovered till this day. Let's get ManchesterHistorian.com, South American slave trade. Again, that is ManchesterHistorian.com, South American slave trade. Let's get that.
ManchesterHistorian.com, the South American slave trade. After Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas in 1492, much of South America was divided between the Spanish and Portuguese with the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1492. When the Europeans arrived in South America, they enslaved the native inhabitants and used them as a free labor force to work on their mines and the cotton, sugar, and coffee tobacco plantations that were being developed. Moreover, shortly after the European colonization occurred, natives of these regions rapidly decreased in number.
So they came in, they enslaved them, they brought their diseases, they shipped them, because keep in mind the Manila Galleon as well, the Trans-Pacific slave trade. These particular nations were involved in that trade as well. We're being traded in that trade as well. So the slave ships do exist for these people. But also remember, they were put in the same captivity for the same things that Africans were brought to North America for: cotton, sugar, coffee, and tobacco. They worked the same plantations as us. Just like the Gadites worked the same plantations as us in North America. Right? It is well known that Portuguese Brazil, as well as the colonies of New Spain, endured some of the most brutal forms of servitude, nearly causing the discovered population of South America to become extinct. The discovered. We aren't even talking about those who haven't been discovered yet, right? Go ahead and go back to the 10 tribes of Israel, historically identified with the Aborigines of the Western Hemisphere, page 225.
The 10 tribes of Israel, historically identified with the Aborigines of the Western Hemisphere by Barbara Allen Simon. Las Casas charged with his countrymen with having massacred above 40 million in less than 50 years. He enumerates millions slaughtered in the Honduras, Venezuela, Peru, Mexico, Hispaniola, 60,000 in Jamaica, while new enforcements were abducted from the provinces and islands. It was the destruction of the tribe of Asher in South America that led to the necessity of acquiring slaves from Africa from a labor. The indigenous laborers of land like Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, Chile, and Ecuador served alongside the slaves from Africa.
So it was the wiping out or nearly the extinction of the natives in South America that required for South America to import the second largest amount of slaves during the transatlantic slave trade. Well, the most. They took the most slaves. Right? So it was the curses of Deuteronomy 28 that caused for us to endure the curses of Deuteronomy 28 in South America. Not to mention, as strategy, the Portuguese would send Brazilian slaves because remember, they knew the lands better than the Europeans did. So they would escape slavery and they wouldn't be able to find them. So what they began doing was taking them and exporting them to foreign countries. So they would send Peruvians to Chile, Chileans to Ecuador, Ecuadorians to Brazil, and Brazilians to Ecuador. Right? To confuse it. It's like, okay, these people know their land too well, so let's send them somewhere else. Right? Even when you're talking about in the Critical Review and the Annals of Literature, volume 57, it records the destruction of Peru. It chronicles the destruction of Peru and the Peruvians, right? It says that this is page 378. There is a great propriety and beauty in this passage. The Spaniards are said to have arrived on the coast of Peru at midnight. The profound tranquility of the scene is happily contrasted with the horrors and agonies of Peruvia on the approach of a cruel and malignant enemy. So it's talking about they came onto the land at midnight. Sound familiar? So don't that sound a lot like what they did in Panama in 1989 and 1990? They came while everybody was sleeping, right? And they destroyed them, right? Now, if you drop down, it says the third Conte represents Pizarro taking possession of Cusco and the sanctionism of Valverde, a Spanish priest, and the dreadful effects. A Peruvian priest was put to the torture. Sorry, this is old in English. The distresses of his daughter Zilia and the inhumane interposition of Las Casas and Zilla's death. So what they did was they killed all the elders and they tortured one. Why do you think they did that? Right? Why would they kill off all the other elders and torture the other? Right? What do the elders know that everybody else doesn't know? The history, right? Remember, in North America, who were the ones who held all of the history as to who they were? It was the elders. So they made an example and they set an example of this particular priest. Right? This is page 379. The fourth canto contains an account of Almagro's expedition to Chile, right? Chile. His crossing into the Andes Mountains of South America, the revolt of the Peruvians in Cusco, and other incidents. The the confederation of the simple and inoffensive people, the Chileans, at the approach of the formidable enemy in arms, is thus described. When the first brave Chilean, with an eager glance, beheld the foe of the hostile in advance, heard the loud thunder of the cannon's crash, and viewed the lightning of the instant flash, the threatening saber in the red and purple streams, the lance of the quiver, the lance that quivered in solar beams. Now, this is a poem talking about what exactly was happening upon the arrival of the Europeans from the perspective of a Chilean warrior, right? It says, the pale surprise, they saw a low rigging storm. They hung a dark dark danger of an unknown form. But soon their spirits flung in generous shame, renounce each terror for the vengeance flame. Plant high with sacred freedom's ardent glow, and dauntless meet the formidable foe. So basically, what happened was, this is what the poem is saying. Upon the arrival of the Europeans at midnight, a brave Chilean with an eager glance saw these people approaching. Right now, I want to point out specifically one particular line. It says, "The threatening saber and red with purple streams." Sounds interesting. Sounds familiar, right? She was clothed with what? Scarlet. Purple and scarlet, right? So this is what he was seeing upon the arrival of the Europeans. Wow. He was seeing the woman, right? With blasphemy, right? In the cup, right? In the cannons, that these people are already, it says he heard the loud thunder of the cannons crash, right? And the lightning of instant flash. He's seeing an attack. These people haven't even reached shore already, and they're already firing and seeking to destroy these people. And then when the Chileans come and retaliate, they call them savages. Interesting, right? But remember, the source said that the Chileans were attached to their freedom. They were conquered, but check this out. Garcia, a Spanish scholar, in the palace, Las Casas dies. And the Spanish and Garcia, a Spanish scholar, arrives in Peru, invested with great power. His virtues conduct the annual festival of the Peruvians, their late victories over the Spaniards in Chile, and the wish for the restoration of their liberty. So they ultimately wound up destroying the Spanish armies in Chile with the help of the Peruvians. So even still, they had victory in battle, right? These natives of South America stretched an entire region, and nearly all of those regions suffered casualty. Not to mention, they went through one of the largest known ethnic cleansing, centuries of ethnic cleansing than any other. You're hard pressed to find a native that's not mestizo. Mestizo means native and European. You're hard pressed, because the extent to which they destroyed the people in South America was completely different than what we witness in other countries. The native population in Argentina is almost zero. We're gonna take a quick break and come on back.
Christ coming back.
Christ coming back.
When he do, we bring it fire.
When he do, we bring it fire.
You don't wanna get burned.
You don't wanna get burned.
You better side with the
You better
righteous.
jump up on his side.
Every day we strive hard
Every day we strive hard
to keep the laws and
to keep the
commandments.
laws and
If you
commandments.
don't keep them or believe in them,
Why you better listen?
homeboy, you gon' vanish.
Hey,
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do when they come for you? Tell me what you gonna do.
What you gonna do?
Better stop playing games, get you some of this truth. What you gonna do?
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do when they come for you? Tell me what you gonna do.
What you gonna do?
Better stop playing games, get you some of this truth. First thing first, gotta praise the Most High for giving me His truth in a world full of lies. We all know sin at an all-time high. If you don't plan on repenting, damn, boy, you gon' die. Everybody doing what they wanna do. Tell me who you worship, who you praying to. You gon' hate it, but I gotta say it. It ain't the Most High, your God is Satan. Yeah. Change you don't want to. You in love with that demon that's within you. Yeah. I'ma have to befriend you, help you out, cause that is what friends do. 2/3 gotta die though, and you don't wanna be a part of that. Please repent and turn from your wicked ways, and that's all I gotta say, cause Christ coming back.
Christ coming back.
When he do it, bring it fire.
When he do, we bring it fire.
You don't wanna get
You
burned.
don't wanna get burned.
Better side with the
You better
righteous.
jump up on his side.
Every day we strive hard
Every day we strive
to
hard
keep the laws and
to keep the
commandments.
laws and
If you
commandments.
don't keep them or believe in them,
Why you better listen?
homeboy, you gon' vanish.
Hey,
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do when they come for you? Tell me what you gonna do.
What you gonna do?
Better stop playing games, get you some of this truth. What you gonna do?
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do when they come for you? Tell me what you gonna do.
What you gonna do?
Better stop playing games, get you some of this truth.
What you gonna do when he come through? Thought it was a game, now the joke's on you. You headed for them flames, let them burn on you. Gon' feel a lot of shame, no one to blame but you. You had a choice, but you would not oblige. When you was alive, you didn't feel the Most High. Now you going down, headed to the left side, where you gon' hear some screams and a whole lot of crying. Yeah, and that's gonna be forever. That's gonna be forever, 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 ever, forever, ever. Look, you ever put your hand on the stove while it burning? That's the feeling that your soul gonna feel for eternity. How'd you pray your chain while you got the opportunity? You only got one life, what you gonna do with it? Yeah, a lot of y'all playing with a higher. I can barely take the sun, I ain't trying to feel the fire.
Christ coming back.
Christ coming back.
When he do, we bring it fire.
When he do, we bring it fire.
You don't wanna get burned.
You don't wanna get burned.
Better side with the
You better
righteous.
jump up on his side.
Every day we strive hard
Every day we strive
to
hard
keep the laws and
to keep the
commandments.
laws and
If you
commandments.
don't keep them or believe in them,
Why you better listen?
homeboy, you gon' vanish.
Hey,
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do when they come for you? Tell me what you gonna do.
What you gonna do?
Better stop playing games, get you some of this truth. What you gonna do?
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do when they come for you? Tell me what you gonna do.
What you gonna do?
Better stop playing games, get you some of this truth.
All right, we are back. We are back. We are back. Time to go double time. All right. So the native tribes of South America stretched throughout the entire region of South America with various settlements, but nearly the full census. They had a full consensus of religious beliefs and behavior. Right. So they stretched really far. A lot of different tribes, a lot of different clans of this particular nation of people in South America, but there was a consensus on their beliefs and the God that they serve. How do we know? Let's get the 10 tribes of Israel, historically identified with the Aborigines of the Western Hemisphere. This is on page 100 in the footnote, right? Go ahead.
The 10 Tribes of Israel, historically identified with the Aborigines of the Western Hemisphere by Barbara Allen. Simon, page 100. The two articles apparel, the mantle and tunic, which are worn by the Indians of Peru, what Samson laid a wager on, and which are named in scripture the tunic talis and sinden, which are the same as what the Indians of Peru call kuzma and paca, and the Spaniards camiseta and manton. I would appear from where here asserts, who speaks from observation, him having himself been many years Peru, that the dress of the Peruvians was more like that of the Jews than the Mexicans.
Their dress was more like what?
More like that of the Jews than the Mexicans.
Read.
While the sandals of the people of New Spain were strictly the Hebrew fashion.
So they crafted their shoes the same way that the Hebrews crafted their shoes.
Hebrew drip.
Right? And keep in mind, they wore the tunic with the brace around the waist the same way that the Israelites did. Right? Upon the arrival of the Europeans. Oh, no, but they were butt naked. Exposed. They weren't wearing clothes. Right? The Peruvians of South America were more so than any other tribe in America resembled the Israelites in attire and dress. Right? Let's go to page 96 in the same book.
Same book, page 96. The meter upon the upon the head of Shigamoxi, the founder of the Empire of Botoga, and those upon the heads of the 10th and 11th Incas of Peru are deserving of notice, and remind us that the Incas of Peru and Zipas of Botaga considered a priest the founder of the respective dynasties.
Check that out. They wore mitris. Not only did they have the Hebrew garb and the Hebrew sandals, but they also wore mitris. Read.
Notice and remind us of the Incas, Peru, and Zipas of Botaga considered a priest of the founder of the respective dynasties. The mitri does indeed seem to have usurped the place of the crown in the New World.
So in the Western Hemisphere, they wear mitris more so than they do crowns. Sound familiar? What is a mitri to the Israelites? It's a spiritual crown. Right? So it says that the mitri does indeed seem to have usurped, which means passed the place of the crown in the New World. Read.
Usurped the place of the crown in the New World. For the copuli worn by the Mexican monarch was a half mitri. And the coincidence is curious that all the native Indian monarchs at the period of the discovery of America by the Spaniards should have worn mitris at the insignia of royalty.
So the monarchs of the Americas used mitris to signify royalty more so than crowns. Anybody can have a crown, but if you have a mitri, that's something different. Right? Let's get we have a picture of the Peruvian monarchy. For those who are in the room, look at your screen. For those who are watching, it should show up on your screen. This is a depiction of the Peruvian monarchs from the Incan Empire. What color are they? Right? Interesting, huh? The Peruvians, also like the Mexicans, wore a mitri as a symbol of royalty and was used more often than a crown itself upon royalty in the regions. The Chileans held the same religious values as the North American Indians to identify their gods. I'm going to repeat that again. The Chileans held the same religious values as the North American Indians and the identity of their God. So remember what we went over in the lesson on Gad, how they believed in one God, how there were many lower spirits, good and bad. Let's see what the Chileans believe. The View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith.
The View of the Hebrews by Ethan Smith. Here then it seems the remote natives of Chile a region 1,260 miles south of Peru in South America, furnished their quota of evidence that they originated in the same family with the North American Indians and hold some of their essential traditions.
Read.
Whence could arise the tradition of those natives of one supreme being, author of all things, that he is the supreme being, the spirit of heaven, the thunderer, the omnipotent, the eternal, the infinite.
Sound familiar? They said, whence could arise the tradition of those natives of one supreme being, author of all things. Remember, the Most High is the Alpha and Omega. He knows the beginning from the end, right? That he is the supreme being, the spirit of heaven, the thunderer, the omnipotent, the eternal, the infinite. Sound familiar? Oh, no, but y'all said that they are worshiping a ton of other gods. Read.
Whence their tradition of the flood, of the several persons being saved on a floating mountain, meaning no doubt the ark.
So they even had a story of Noah and the flood.
That's wild.
Okay, so you got people who dress like Hebrews, wear mitris, speak Hebrew, live on a land that has a Hebrew name, believe in one God who they describe as the supreme being, the spirit of heaven, the thunderer, the omnipotent, the eternal, and the infinite. And they have stories from the Bible with no Bible, but they're not Israelites. Read.
No doubt the ark. Whence their ideas so correct of man's eternal soul.
So they even know that men have a soul, have an immortal soul. The author says, where did their ideas so correct of a man's immortal soul? Read.
Don Alonso de Aracilla in the History of Chile says of the natives there, the religious system of Araucanians,
the Araucanians
is simple. They acknowledge the supreme being, the authors of all things, whom they call Pilin, a word derived from Puli or Pili, the soul, and signifies the supreme essence. They call
Interesting. Read.
They call him also Guni Pilan, the spirit of heaven, Bulagan, the great being, Talakov, the thunderer, Vivilemo, Vivilemo, the omnipotent, the omnipotent, Mojelu, the eternal, and Avnolu, the infinite.
So this is what they say. You know how when the angels go before the Most High and they say, Ahaya, Ashar, Ahaya, this, the that, the this, the that, the this, the that. This, they call him the Great Spirit and describe who he is. The thunderer, the omnipotent, the eternal, the great being, the spirit of heaven. Right? Read.
He adds, the universal government of Pilin. His supreme essence is a prototype of the Arasanian polity. He is the great Tokui of the invisible world.
So he's the leader of the invisible world. He's the head of all things spiritual. Read.
He goes on to speak of his having subordinate invisible beings under him, to whom he commits the administration of affairs of less importance.
Oh, what do those sound like? Angels, right? A lot like what the Native Americans were talking about, right?
Yeah, this reminds me of
Read.
This author sees fit to call sublateral divinities. We may believe they are traditional notion of angels, good and bad, such as is held by the Indians of North America.
So they believe in the same God and have the same knowledge of the spiritual realm that the Native Americans have. Why? Because they were going to the Native American priests, the Mohawk. Go ahead and read that last part. This author says
of this people, they all agreed in the belief of immortality of the soul.
Immortality
of the soul. This consolatory truth is deeply rooted and in a matter in it with them.
So It says they all agreed in the belief of the immortality of the soul. Oh, but they're savages. It says this consolatory truth is deeply rooted in a manner innate with them. This is something that's ingrained in their spirit. Anybody ever heard of a God gene? The book of Enoch talks about the God gene. These people have it. These people have the God gene. Something that the scripture says the children of Israel have. An innate belief in power, immortality in the spirit realm, an innate connection to the most high power. These people have it. Read.
Innate within them. They hold that man is composed of two substances, essentially different: the corruptible body and the soul, incorporeal and eternal.
So sounds like scripture, doesn't it? Where Paul talks about the flesh and the flesh and the soul. Keep in mind, the spirit, the soul, and the body are separate things. The soul is who you are. The spirit is your conscience, and the body is what those two things are housed in. They had knowledge of all three. They had knowledge of all three. Are these people Israelites or not? What do you think?
Gotta be.
They live on the land, the exact land that was geographically described by Moses. They dress as Hebrews. They speak as Hebrews. The land that they're on is a Hebrew name. And they serve one God. They live by, swear by, and serve one God. Sounds like the children of Israel to me. Now, keep in mind, I want to make sure I point this out. The information that they just revealed there can only be found in the books of Enoch and Jubilees concerning the spirit world. I want to make that clear. So obviously there was some information that they knew from back in the day, like when Christ said, "Ye err not knowing the scriptures," referring to something that you can only find in Enoch. Not only does the land of South America fit the prophecies given by both Moses and Jacob, the people also reflect the character, nature, and the prophecies given by them as well, making these South American countries of Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Venezuela, Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil from the tribe of Asher. Now, a lot of people are probably thinking, what about Suriname? What about Guyana? What about French Guyana? What about Uruguay? The Uruguayans were wiped out, were destroyed, right? Now, you did have subsequently, you had other tribes that migrated from Brazil and Paraguay into Uruguay, right? But the original Uruguayans were wiped out by disease. Keep in mind, they were wiped out by disease before they were even discovered. The European diseases wiped them out before they could even be found. Found alive, at least. They were found dead, right? And the reason why I don't bring up Suriname, French Guyana, and Guyana is for the reason that there's a mixture of tribes in those areas. You have Benjamites there. You have Jamaicans there. You have a lot of people from India there as well. So it's sort of a melting pot of different tribes there, right? There are also populations of Asher in Europe, right? Southeast Asia in particular, referring to the Manila Galleon, with the tribes of Asher being taken from Peru, Chile, Ecuador, and being brought to Mexico and being sent over to Southeast Asia, as well as Asia. Kabul, Afghanistan. I can't stress that enough. The Pashtun in Kabul, Afghanistan are from the tribes of Israel. There is a mixture of the tribe of Asher, Naphtali, as well as other subsequent tribes as well in among the Pashtun of Kabul. That's why I wanted you to remember earlier when it was talking about the borders of Israel, and it refers to Kabul being within those borders. right? And we're going to get into Kabul in a later lesson, a little bit deeper concerning the Pashtun of Afghanistan. But a big reason why the U.S. military was over there had nothing to do with their treatment of the people. See, what you find when you break down the Pashtun. I went over this. I was speaking to the elder and the elder woman of the church, and I was like, I'm doing the research and I'm looking, and I'm like, these people don't have Muslim ideas. They judge based off of the Torah. What the Pashtun in Afghanistan keep is the unbridled laws of Moses, which means if the law says an eye for an eye, it's a literal eye for an eye. Where it says if your skin, if the sin calls you to, if something's causing you to sin, take it off. So not only are these people now, they're claiming to be the wrong tribe, they claim to be the Benjamites, but based off of the information that we broke down today, according to the scriptures, we know what tribe they're from now. Many remain in the Middle East today. There are also many in Africa, because keep in mind, remember, Christ told the children of Israel, when you shall see the cities compassed with armies, flee into the mountains. Asherites were still present amongst the Judeans at that time. Therefore, when Judah left, guess who left with them? Some Asherites left with them as well, right? So there are some in Africa as well. And there's also many in the islands of the South Pacific. How? Because the islands of the South Pacific and the Incan Empire were trading with each other. That's how sweet potatoes got from South America to the Polynesian Islands. The sweet potatoes are not native to the Polynesian Islands. They got there via trade with the South Americans. So much is still unknown about South America, but as the Most High reveals more, we will continue to add to what we've shown today. So there will be bonus lessons concerning these other tribes as more information comes in. So as we receive it, you receive it as well. And a notable biblical figure from the tribe of Asher is Anna, the prophetess. Right? Now, next week, we'll be breaking down the tribe, in our next lesson, we'll be breaking down the tribe of Naphtali. It's going to be a big one, and you're in for a lot of information. That was going to be very entertaining. We have a lot of information set up concerning the tribe of Naphtali today, but this is the conclusion of our lesson. All praise to the Most High. Right? And we have a couple of pictures that we're going to cycle through. Let's start with the Argentine Indian, the Argentinian. Right, you should see these pictures come up on your screen in just a moment. This is the brother from Argentina. Right, this is post-European colonization. Right. Let's go to Ecuadorian, the Ecuadorian brother. This is a brother from Ecuador, a Native American from Ecuador. We also have a brother from some brothers from Brazil. Right? Uruguay. That's a brother from Uruguay. And now we have the Amazon, the brothers from the Amazon. They all look the same. They all look the same. That's the Uruguayan brother. These are the brothers from the Amazon, right? Let's get the Paraguayans. These are our brothers from Paraguay. We have a second picture of the Ecuadorian. We're going to come back to Pashtun. Another one of our brothers from Ecuador. Chile. A Chilean brother. And a sister as well. Let's go ahead and get the Brazilian boy. We have an older Brazilian brother who actually resembles a South Pacific Islander. Let's get the Brazilian brother. That's a captured native Brazilian. We're going to cycle back up. Let's get the Brazilian sisters. Next picture. The very next one. We're going to go back up to our Brazilian brothers. That picture. I'll click it. Yeah. Right here. One of our brothers from Brazil as well. And then we finally have the Pashtun. The Pashtun still in the Middle East today. Right here. Right? And even the Pashtun of Afghanistan still resemble the South Americans today in visage. They still resemble the South American brothers and sisters today. Right? So with that, lastly, we want to give all thanks and praise to the Most High Ahaya, Bahashem Yeshaya, Wabarawak once again. Y'all give him praise. And once again, as we continue to go forth in these lessons, the goal of these lessons is first of all to reach and wake up our children, our brothers and sisters from the children of Israel worldwide. That's the goal, right? That's what these lessons are for, and to sort of show how little we actually know about our people, right? And how confusing it can get for those who think it's something easy. It's a lot of information that goes into this. And when the Most High says that we're scattered amongst the Gentiles, we are scattered. Like it's a serious thing. It wasn't meant to be easy to find the children of Israel. It was never meant to be easy. It was always something that was going to be difficult because of the curses that were brought upon us by our sin. Right? So closing out, do we have any questions, any comments? Any questions or comments in the chat or in the room? All right. So it sounds like we're good in here as far as questions and comments. All praises to the Most High. Great lesson, the water. All praises to the Most High on that. For those who are all tuning in, we have baptisms coming up first week of November. I believe, right, Elder? Second week of November, Salakia. Second week of November, we have baptisms. We also want to send our greetings out to the brothers and sisters in Sierra Leone. Elder Johannes, Bishop Michael. I know y'all are in here watching. So blessings and shalom to you. We'll be having a conversation with you, Elder, with you a little bit later. Do we have any other announcements, Elder? That's about it. All right, so that's going to be it, and we'll be back with our next lesson concerning the tribe of Naphtali in the first a week from now, right? A week from now, right? So all praise to the Most High once again. Remember, stay prayed up. There's a lot going on. Make sure you keep healthy. For those of you who are looking to, I suggest stocking up on water, food, buy microgreens, seeds, lots of heirloom seeds. Stuff like that. Stocking up on non-perishables. When you get microgreens, try to look at things like oats, wheat, and stuff like that. Things that you can grow indoor in your house. Look at doing that kinds of stuff as well, because that's going to be important going forward. There's a food shortage happening throughout North America, and there's also a lot of famine that's happening worldwide as well, outside of the U.S., in the UK, in Canada, and different places like that. So make sure that you're stocking up on the right things. All right. Make sure you, like I said, stay prayed up. We're in a very, very, very highly demonic time of the year. And there will be spiritual attacks. So take the time for self-examination and prayer so that when these things come upon you, you're ready for it. Remember, I said earlier, those who are not prepared will fall. Those who are not prepared will fall. It's evident, it's given. So prepare yourself, right? All praise to the Most High again. I want to say shalom to the brothers and sisters who are watching. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe. Facebook, follow us. And we thank the Most High for you all as well and all of your prayers. We ask for your prayers as we pray for you all. And blessing. Shalom. All right, all praises.